Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Million Pound Mission Podcast. It's your buddy Adam, the PhD, the previously heavy dude, and this is episode number 340, the Carnivore Diet with Dr. Shawn Baker. How's it going out there in podcast land? I hope you guys are doing well. Hopefully you are healthy and starting to ramp up your own personal life momentum. We've got a lot going on this week inside the community. If you're new to the show, first off, if you are new to the show, obviously this is episode 340. That's a lot. It can be overwhelming. People ask me for recommendations, like should I go to the beginning? What should I do? My recommendation is check out this episode and then go to episode 300 and work your way forward from there. That'll get you caught up on the main meaty principal topics that I feel are super important. And then you can feel free to work your way from episode 1 and work forward from there. Now, if you are new to the show as well, I want to make sure you guys know that we've got a free community to plug into, and a lot of things are happening this week. This week, I've got one-on-one 15-minute hot seat sessions. Those fill up quickly, but you can, once a month, I pick one day and I just go crazy with these one-on-ones. If you sign up for the Mission Possible community, which is, again, free, you can go to millionpoundmission.com and check that out and get signed up. You can participate in the one-on-one hot seats, which we are doing this week. We are prepping our next 28-day cycle, our battle plan workbook. That is free. That's inside the community as well. And also, this week is the week that I remind you, donate that weight. If you have lost weight in the last 28 days, please donate it to our Million Pound Mission. It is free to do that. Go to millionpoundmission.com, go to the bottom of the page and help us. We are getting close to that 60,000 pounds donated mark. Congrats to all of you out there that are getting great results. I know we've been through a rough patch as a society with the coronavirus and the quarantine situation. So if you're still kicking butt and dropping weight during that time frame, congrats to you. So head on over to millionpoundmission.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, and you can donate that weight and see who's going to put us up over 60,000 pounds. Whoever does it, I want you to screenshot it. You can actually see the ticker go up as you donate your weight loss. And I want to know who puts us over the mark. I'm very excited about that. Okay, so let's dive into this episode. Dr. Shawn Baker is somebody that is probably, it's safe to say, he's one of the more polarizing figures in health today. And I'm sure that some of you guys have heard of him or heard of the Carnivore Diet or heard of somebody trying this. But if you haven't, it's basically a really highly trending offshoot of the Ketogenic Diet, where participants are just consuming meat and sometimes meat byproducts like eggs, collagen, sometimes a little bit of dairy on a daily basis. That's what they eat, mainly just meat. And it is a really interesting concept. And with this interview, again, we're bringing in one of the leaders that is really leading the charge in the carnivore diet movement, Dr. Shawn Baker. He had an amazing transformation with his own health. He's been eating carnivore, AKA just meat, for I believe over 3 years now. And he is leading this movement of people that are getting on board and realizing great results. And just as an important note, I've been eating this way since the beginning of April, like mid-March. For the first 3 months of this year, I was doing a meat and bricks protocol. So I was eating carnivore, but adding in keto bricks. Now I have taken the keto bricks out just to give this a full go with seeing how this regimen works for me, seeing how the protocol impacts my health. Great so far. I'm actually using a keto carnivore program that my buddy Danny Vega put together for me, and I'm really enjoying it. The body fat's down, energy is good, sleep is good, and strength levels are maintaining and going strong. So that's my own personal testimonial for the carnivore experiment that I am doing. But this conversation with Dr. Shawn is awesome. I mean, this dude doesn't pull any punches. He will say whatever's on his mind. He is amazingly intelligent on this subject. And like I said, super high energy, but also a little bit polarizing. If you follow him on social media, you know what I mean. So in this interview, we talk about his own carnivore diet transformation story. We discuss what the exact carnivore diet protocol looks like. We discuss his carnivore recommendations and mistakes to avoid. Then I had to ask this question. I was like, yo, Dr. Shawn, who started the fight, you or the vegans? Because he is in a battle with the vegans And it's interesting to say the least. So we talk about that, and he had some interesting thoughts on that whole thing. And then we finish up with some quick start tips for those that want to go carnivore and experiment with it, just like I am. This is a really good interview. Dr. Shawn is a good dude, regardless of what your impression is of him from seeing him on social media. Just give this interview a chance. Let Dr. Shawn open up and tell you his story from his perspective. And I think you'll enjoy it, regardless of your dietary beliefs. So without any further delay, let's dive into episode number 340, The Carnivore Diet with Dr. Shawn Baker. All right, Dr. Shawn Baker, welcome to the Million Pound Mission podcast. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing wonderful, man. It's good to talk to you, Adam.
Well, I'm really fired up. This is an interview I've been looking forward to. I knew that there was a chance I was going to meet you out at the Keto Summit in Omaha. So I was like, all right, I got to, put my face in front of this guy, shake his hand, and invite him on the show. And we made it happen. So I just want to dive in. Like, you are somebody I've been following on Instagram for quite a while. You've got a lot of interesting things that you're putting out there. And I want to talk a little bit about the background of how you came to figure out that the carnivore diet protocol was the best option for you. So let's start there.
I really like the way you frame that as option for me, because I think that's ultimately what we want to find out individually. And it was just, I just turned 53, and I have been an athlete my whole life, and we talked about it. I've done, powerlifting and competitive high level rugby, and strongman, and then I did the Highland Games, and did that, and won a Masters World Championships in that. And, it was kind of funny. I just won the World Championships, and I think I was at 43 or so. At my 44th birthday, I deadlifted 700 pounds on my birthday. And I remember I did a one-arm snatch with a 175-pound barbell. 6'5" with long monkey arms is pretty decent to do.
Yeah.
And that was for the weight over bar. I used to do those things for weight over bar.
Yep.
You throw that 56-pound weight over bar. And, I was just 290 pounds, and my health was getting pretty crappy. And I was, a busy surgeon, and, not an unintelligent guy. And I was like, man, I should not be sick. I'm working out hard. I was running sprints, lifting weights, almost every day, training my ass off. And I was eating a diet that wasn't on surface horrible. I mean, I ate a lot of volume, but it wasn't awful. And I kind of made a decision that, I'm just kind of done with the 290 pound stuff. And so I made the decision that I'm going to lose weight, and I'm very disciplined, and it wasn't hard. I literally dropped 50 pounds in 3 months, and, a lot of it was, which will make the calorie people happy. It was caloric reduction, extra workout, eating lean food and high fiber. And I lost weight and got there and was completely and utterly miserable. I was like starving. I looked good. I was lean.
Yeah.
And the nurses that I work with, we like the fat Dr. Baker way better, because you're kind of an asshole now. And because I was like friggin' hungry walking around, and I was like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. I just can't. So, I transitioned through a whole bunch of diets. That was, something like 8 years ago. And it was, I think paleo was coming in, at that time. Yeah. So I tried that and bought some paleo cookbooks and started doing that, and, enjoyed it a little more, and liked a little bit, more animal fat in my diet. And from there, I went into reading more and more about nutrition, and studying and reading books and reading papers, and got into the low carb stuff, and then finally went into the ketogenic stuff. And then, so about 5 or 6 years in, I started looking at these crazy wacko carnivore people that were eating just meat. And I was like, this is interesting. And then started looking back at the old school bodybuilders like Vince Carano with the steak and egg stuff. And it was, 4 or 5 days of steak and eggs and then a carb refeed day. And I tried that, and, I enjoyed it, but I mostly enjoyed the steak and eggs part. Quite honestly, the carb refeeds for me became a chore. It was like, man, I don't want to eat all this crap. And I was doing, I was doing this when I was doing the keto stuff. I was doing the carb cycling, and, the carb nights, and the carb backloading stuff. And, you'd have these carb up days, and I enjoyed them for the first 3 or 4 weeks. And then I was like, man, I don't want to eat that much. And it was not doing my gastrointestinal tract any favors. And so I just kind of got the courage to say, maybe I don't need the carb ups. And I went, at the end of 2016, pretty publicly at this time. I had, a little bit of a social media following, enough to where we had some interest in, and at that time, most of the people following me, a lot of, maybe physicians and stuff like that. And I did it for 30 days. And we took bets on what I was going to die of, whether it was going to be scurvy, or my colon was going to fall out from lack of fiber, or was like my heart going to seize up instantly. And we all joked, and we did polls, and I can't remember what I was supposed to die. But of course, none of that happened. And so after the 30 days, I was like, okay, it was a 30-day experiment. Great. I didn't die. I felt pretty good. Went back to the regular diet, put a bunch of foods back in. And I just pretty much instantly was like, man, I don't feel very good again. I don't feel as good. And then just kind of transitioned back to the diet. And then, I've been now well over 3 years, plugging away and doing well. So that's been my sort of foray into this sort of world of wacky meat eating.
So meat only for 3 years, just to be clear. So what does your nutrition look like on a typical day? Like when are we eating? How many meals are we eating? And what are we eating?
Yeah. So, I would say that, just to be completely honest, I sometimes will eat eggs. I'll sometimes fish, I consider meat. It's an animal product. Sometimes I'll have some dairy. There's been 2 occasions when I've eaten those sort of off plan. They were both on my child's birthday, where I conceded to have a piece of birthday cake to help him celebrate. And, one time, it's kind of funny. My boy had this chocolate cake that I had, and it tasted good. It was like, I'm not going to lie, I said I didn't like it, but I got really just upset. My stomach was feeling like crap. And then the next 6 months later, my daughter turned 9, and she had a piece of cheesecake, and I ate that, and I was totally fine. So, I don't really seek it out or desire it or crave it, and I'll have spices on my food sometimes. I'm not like Michaela Peterson, where, a molecule of the wrong food is going to set me off in this reaction. I'm still pretty okay. It's, but a typical day for me, on an average day would be like a steak or 2 for breakfast and a steak or 2 for an early dinner. That's it. There might be some days where I'll be steak and eggs. Maybe it'll be steak and some salmon. But I'd say 95 to 98% of the time it's just steak and steak. That's what it looks like. But if I feel like something else, I'm going to have it. And quite honestly, at some point, if I feel like having a friggin' slice of watermelon, I'm going to have that too. I'm not in this dogmatic. The only thing I'm dogmatic about is, let's do something that works for you well in your health. Yeah. Find out what that is and do that. And if it's eating strictly meat and only meat, great. If it's eating mostly meat and a little bit of, fruit and vegetable here and there, that's also fine. I don't really care. And some people, it may be plant-based, although I have some sort of reservations about recommending that based for a number of reasons. But at the end of the day, it's what works for me. And I find, again, I think there's some benefits to, some people talk about fasting or intermittent fasting or infrequent eating meals. I think there's some benefits to that. I think we eat too often, too frequently, and most of what we eat is this garbage. The snack food stuff is complete garbage. So the nice thing about this diet is it sort of sets you up automatically to eat infrequently. And I think that's probably in line with what, ancestral humans probably had to do. Yeah. We didn't have grocery stores. Maybe we were, as we were clearly nomadic. Maybe we walked through a patch of berries and we ate those for a while. And maybe we even spent a day or 2 gathering them and ate them. But honestly, we were on the move most of the time. It's not very easy to stop and bust out the Tupperware dish, sit down and pop it in the microwave and say, well, it's time to eat. That's just not likely. So we probably ate once a day, maybe twice a day, because you got to think about it, particularly if cooking was involved and you're nomadic, you got to build a fire. That's not a trivial matter.
Right.
So it's not like you can just, eat every 15 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes sense. And I've seen you eat. We actually got to celebrate your 53rd birthday. Danny Vega and myself concocted a steak with a side of steak birthday surprise. We put birthday candles in 2 steaks and delivered it, and we sang happy birthday to Dr. Shawn. So
I really appreciate that. And that was right after I just had a steak. So
we brought you 2 more.
I had three big old ribeyes that night, and I was out at a cow pasture in Nebraska with the certified Piedmontese guys, and they cooked me up a big tomahawk that morning at their facility. And we had some filet and some sirloin. So I bet I had 6 pounds of steak that day. man.
That's a good birthday.
I was
That's a good
full, man.
birthday
That was a
right
big
there.
birthday, yeah. So that's an unusual day for me. Normally, when I'm at maintenance level, it's kind of hanging out at 240, which is where I usually sit at. Usually somewhere 3 or 4 pounds of meat a day is what kind of keeps my machine running. So if I want to get leaner, I eat a little less. If I want to eat more, get bigger, I have to eat more and more frequently. So that's how it works.
So with people that are following the carnivore protocol, I mean, do you generally recommend people to track macros, track calories, or is it more of kind of that eat when you're hungry, feed and see what happens to your body?
So I think, I take a philosophical approach to this. I mean, yes, if your goal, I mean, let's talk about why people fail on a diet, first of all, because I think that's very instructive. And I think there's two things that make people fail. I think one, if you're hungry all the time, you're not going to stick to this diet. I mean, you can do it for a short period of time, but if you're hungry, a week in a row, good. 2 weeks in a row, good. 3 weeks in a row, good. 4 weeks in a row, you're face down in a bowl, in a pile of cupcakes, right? So you can't be hungry all the time, and you got to enjoy what you eat, right? So if I'm telling you, hey, dude, you need to cut back on the Oreos and ice cream and Doritos, we're gonna say, let's go eat kale and quinoa. You're gonna say, well, that kind of sucks, right? I'm going to do it because someone's forcing me to, but instinctively your body it doesn't want to do that. So you want some nutrition. And so when I talk to people, when I consult with people, whatever, I try to get people this idea that, it's really about changing a relationship with nutrition and food. And you got to get that first, I think, for long-term success. If you cannot be satisfied with what you eat, if you cannot reach satiety, if you cannot enjoy the food you're eating, and you're always anxious about food, and food is a chore, and food is a hassle, and food is not, is not something that it's not a reward to you. That is to say, if you have to put so much effort and thought into eating, I mean, man, it's hard. It's really hard. And so I try to tell people, let's just eat to satiety. Let's enjoy the mood. You'll go be decadent. Make the juiciest, best seasoned steak of your life. Throw some bacon with it, throw some eggs with it, whatever you really enjoy. Get that satiety. Don't count calories or macro. Count satiety. Count how many meals you enjoy. Then what will happen is you'll stop having these cravings for these foods that tend to be hyperpalatable and make you overconsume. After a period of time, you will naturally kind of regulate your appetite. Now, at some point, once you get to this point where I say you're no longer, when you're sort of, you change that food relationship where you can be hungry, you can be moderately hungry, and there's somebody with some whatever dessert or something out there, and you can pass up that plate of cookies, because you know what happens. I'm just going to eat one. Well, that one turns into 12, right? I'm not the same way. When I was 300 pounds, man, I could sit down and would give me one pint of Ben and Jerry's. Let me go get that second one. Let me go get that third one. Crushing it. Not because you didn't get enough calories. It's because you just can't stop eating this stuff.
Right.
Companies know this. This is what they engineer this stuff this way. And so once you've changed that relationship, then, let's say my goal is to, get shredded or, get down to X amount. Then you can you can maybe track a little bit. But quite honestly, most people don't need to do that. And they find it while some people say it's a restrictive diet, it's very freeing in the fact that you can just be, my decision-making process is, what do I want to eat today? One steak or two, for this meal. And that's often all it is. And some people say, well, it's boring, but you can make it. We've got on our website, meatrx.com, we've got hundreds of recipes. If you want to get creative and make chaffles and, those things where you put eggs and cheese in an omelet maker and you crush it down there, you can do that if you want to get exciting about it. I'm just lazy. I mean, I'm like, I like steak. I'm going to eat it. And I've never sit down, like last night I had a skirt steak. I've never sit down to that thing going, oh, poor me. I got to eat this awful, horrible diet steak. I mean, when you're sitting down with a bowl of, salad and celery and carrot sticks, I mean, my God.
Yeah.
Who's going to enjoy that? So it's about, like I said, it's more about natural satiety. I mean, are there any animal on the planet where you have to send them a Fitbit and an app to track their food? I mean, it's nobody. I mean, we're the only ones that require to do that, and we shouldn't need to do that.
Yeah, and we're the ones to get in our own head about it and start having these mental discussions of, heaping all this pressure onto ourselves, and I've got to do 10 hours more of exercise, and I've got to eat 10 times less food, and it's got to be all vegetables, and it's got to be terrible. So yeah, that's a huge problem that you identified there with the diet industry in general. Now, with carnivore, one of the questions I get the most is, does it have to be like, how important is the sourcing, like the grass fed? Like, what if people are like, I can't afford $50 in steaks every day, can I buy the regular stuff versus the grass fed stuff? Like, what if we're getting beef with like some hormones in it and stuff like that?
Yeah, so that's a great question and a very common question I answer all the time. And the short answer is, just as many people reverse diabetes, come off medications, lose weight eating cheap ground beef and eggs as there are people eating the finest, highest, most expensive grass-fed beef. I mean, that's the reality of that, right? Now, when we sort of say, well, this individual may do better eating, a grass finished product, or, and again, that's a very deceptive term because of labeling laws. Maybe there's a lot that goes in that. You may just be paying for a label, quite honestly. But so I don't discount that some people will add liver and organ meats and grass finished beef and have a better outcome. That's occurring. I mean, for sure. To blanketly say the only way you can be successful by doing that is a disservice to so many people, because there's so many people out there that really just can't afford it. And this is a reflection of our whole food system in general. That's a different topic. And I think that what we see in the vegan community is we have these people that they're ideologically and dogmatically opposed to a narrative. Do not eat animals, and we're going to make all the science that we cherry pick agree with that, and the same thing for the environmental stuff. And if we do that, in this carnivore group where we're saying, well, the only way you can be healthy is by eating the regeneratively grown animals and everything else is poison, I mean, it's just not right. It's a disservice. We don't have any studies whatsoever that would support that. I will say, from an environmental standpoint, yes, we probably need to shift more towards a regenerative style of pasturing our animals. I think that's important. I mean, just the hormone question alone. I mean, if we look at the numbers, when people say, oh, these animals are pumped through antibiotics and hormones, the numbers themselves, if you actually look what's going on, if we look at, say, I want to say a 3-ounce serving of, regular old cow meat, beef that's got an implant tag, and look at the estrogen content, it's got like 7 nanograms per 3 ounces, right? That's not very much. 7 nanograms is a tiny amount. If we look at an animal that has not gotten a hormone implant, there's still 5 nanograms because the animals naturally make it anyway. So you're going to get that tiny amount. Now you're like, well, how much is a nanogram? It's an incredibly small amount. If we compare it to, let's say, another animal product like an egg has 94 nanograms. So if you're like, I'm only going to eat hormone-free beef, then I would say never, ever, ever eat an egg. I mean, this is what we would have to say. So you have to put it into perspective. These people are eating. Oh my God, you're eating an animal that had a hormone implant, and meanwhile they're eating Oreos. You're like, there's things, there's big things and there's little things, and we're trying to make these minuscule differences. The antibiotic usage. I think the biggest issue with antibiotic usage is antibiotic resistant organisms. Not that the antibiotic is ending up in the meat or you're eating antibiotics for the most part. When the USDA inspects this, and they do, when I was just on site with a USDA inspector at a meat processing facility last week in Nebraska, there with the certified Piedmontese guys, and when they check if there's antibiotics in the meat, that meat gets thrown out. The rancher loses all that money. Right. And there's laws. You cannot give these animals antibiotics within X amount of time with slaughter. Typically on USDA inspections, 0.5% of the time they'll find antibiotics. So less than 0.5% of the time, and that meat gets thrown out. So you're not really exposed to this pump full of hormones. This is all rhetoric. This is hyperbolic stuff. Some people make arguments about these pesticide residues that you might see in there. And again, those are also nanograms, picogram quantities. You're exposed to that stuff in the environment anyway. Should we be exposed to that at all? Ideally, probably not. But I mean, the reality is, it's in the environment. Making the argument that there's a micro, not even a microgram or a milligram. It's picograms and nanograms in this meat. don't eat vegetables at all because it's covered in pesticide, whether it's organic or even endogenously made. So these arguments, to me, I don't really get too excited about. So at the end of the day, if all you can afford is to go to Walmart and eat ground beef, and it's going to help you lose, 50 pounds and get you off your diabetic meds, by all means, please do that. And if you can afford to support these ranchers, and I do that I promote these guys all the time. If you can afford to go directly to the rancher and buy that, please do that.
So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Like when you are looking for high quality stuff, what websites are you looking at? Local, obviously I'm in Indiana, so I can find some local farmers that have some really good stuff, and especially organ meats, because people just want to get rid of that around here. I'm like, hell yes, I'll take the heart, I'll take the liver. But where, like website wise, or if you're looking online to get some good quality meat, where do you go?
Well, I mean, there's so many places. There's so many good ranchers out there. Like I said, that's one of the things we've done at our website. We've compiled this huge list of them at MeatRx. We've got, regenerative agriculture. We've got the Savory Institute. We've got, these people their environmental impact has been verified. We've got lists of local ranchers. We've got, Eat Wild, all these organizations. We just try to list as many as possible so people can make their choice. That will be listed by, what's local to them. That's a good way to do it. That's probably as good a way as I know personally. I mean, there's, other than having a neighbor that is a rancher or farmer, that's the way to do it. But yeah, there's lists out there, and we've compiled some to make it easier.
Yeah, and MeatRx is a great site, guys. Shawn's mentioned it a couple of times, and you've got one hell of a good membership option on there, and it's like a great value. So check that out. It's meatrx.com. Make sure you hit that. Now, with carnivore, what mistakes are you seeing people make? Like, how are people? We've talked about kind of how to get into it, but how are people screwing it up, in your opinion?
Well, I think the first thing is, they take the restrictive mindset in and they just undereat. I mean, we see that. One is it's pretty sad. It's pretty satiating, and the people get scared. A lot of people are scared just to eat a lot of it. So they're like, oh my God, I can only eat 6 ounces of meat and 4 eggs. And then they'll tell me that's their diet. And I'm like, and they're saying I don't have any energy. I'm like, well, shit, you didn't even eat. I wouldn't even get me out of bed, dude. So I mean, it's like, it's kind of like they don't eat enough. I think that they sort of, some people become really, I mean, this is a little bit long-term in this. And I think some people conflate everything to diet, like I got a cold and they're like, oh my God, my diet's wrong. And I'm like, yeah, maybe you just got a cold because there's a virus around and it's wintertime and everybody's, so we see a lot of that where it's like, if I'm going to do it for a week and if it doesn't work, I quit. I mean,
Right.
That's really, I mean, honestly, I think given it, I know we do these 30-day challenges, but in my experience, it's about 90 days is really a fair shake of what this is. I mean, I think that, some of the stuff we talked about at the beginning, some people believe that because Dr. Baker only eats ribeye steaks, I got to do it that way too. And I say, this is what I'm lazy. This is what works for me.
Yep.
But a lot of people are going to do better with a little bit of variety here and there. And conversely, some people are like, I got to eat 500 grams of liver a week, or I'm just going to die. And that also doesn't happen. And so I think it's being willing to experiment a little bit, being open with it, giving it a long enough period of time, eating enough. Some people will develop, particularly people come from standard American diet. They'll as we know what happens, when we go on any kind of low carb diet, our insulin levels fall because of that. Our kidney no longer hangs on to fluid and water. So we end up having a natural just solute diuresis where we just become dehydrated basically. And we just have to replace that. So some people, might have to go out of their way to take in a little more fluid and electrolyte. So I think those are things that commonly come up. There's GI things that will happen, for many people. For most people, they just won't go to the bathroom as much. And they'll be like, oh my God, I'm constipated. Well, it's just like, well, you're just not wasting stuff anymore. When we're on a plant-based high fiber diet, most of that nutrition, it's kind of funny. We waste about 40% of the food we produce in the United States as it is. And most of that ended up in a landfill is organic or inorganic fruits and vegetables and then baked goods. It's most of what's in the landfills. It just gets thrown away because it doesn't keep very well. I can't tell you how many times when I was on a paleo diet or a keto diet, I was buying all these organic fruits and vegetables, and I'd buy them in bulk, and then 3 days later I'd throw half in the trash. I mean, it was embarrassing, but it was what was happening. And we're wasting that. But interestingly, when we eat those foods, we don't absorb much of that, and we just waste it down the toilet. So we got all this nutrition going down the toilet. It's kind of funny. Human feces is high in vitamin B12 if you want to. Not that I'm suggesting anyone eat that stuff, but I mean, and it's high in fiber too. And so it's like, you could make an argument, and there actually, I think there is some attempt to make human feces into food products. I mean, as gross as it sounds, I think that they're working on that as another way to solve the world nutrition problems. But so we see that you're just not wasting much. What our human digestive system is so well efficiently designed to absorb and get nutrition out of meat and fat that it is all done very effectively in the small intestine. So by the time it leaves the small intestine, there's really nothing there. I mean, there's a little tiny bit of liquid. We know this from ileostomy patients that no longer have a colon. They have this little bag that everything goes into. When they eat fruits and vegetables, all that stuff ends up in the bag. You can still see whole. Remember, I mean, this is kind of gross, but when you ate a bunch of corn, you look in the toilet like, wow, there's a whole bunch of corn in there.
There it is.
But when's the last time you ate a steak and said, wow, look at that steak sitting in the toilet? It never, ever happens. These people are saying steak is rotting in your colon. If you poop out a piece of steak, it's going to be pretty unusual. I'd like to know about that. That's going to be like a medical anomaly. But, so for all these people that meat rots in your colon, complete garbage. What rots in your colon is plant food. It's fermenting in your colon. I mean, we see that all the time. So that's, the misconception is I'm constipated because I'm not making just copious amounts of poop. That is a misconception. So those are things that sometimes happen. And then some people get diarrhea, and there's another kind of thing going on with that. It's the same thing. It's liquid rather than solid entering the large intestine. And it takes a while for your body to kind of readapt to being required to reabsorb all that fluid that you're making now.
Yeah, I saw one of your latest hashtags. I know that you're kind of coaching Joe Rogan through this experience a little bit. And I believe the hashtag was something like Save Joe's Butthole. Pray for Joe's butthole. Yeah, there we go. And I watched your interview on Joe Rogan, and I kept on laughing about how he couldn't get over the fact that what, I'm not supposed to have a giant bowel movement every single day. And you're like, no, it's we're absorbing most of it. That's good. And when you think about it, that is a good sign of nutrition. We are absorbing and using the food, and that's the whole damn point, right?
Yeah, I mean, our colon stores and gets rid of waste, and the less waste you're getting rid of, the more nutrition you're actually absorbing. I mean, if you look at it that way, I mean, there's, the normal frequency of human bowel movements is anywhere from once a week to 3 or 4 times a day. And so, I mean, that's all considered normal. I've said this before, there's no prizes at the end of life for having the largest bowel movement or the most bowel movements. It just doesn't happen. And there's some interesting literature on there that show that people that have higher rates of diverticulosis have more bowel movements and more fiber in their diet. Wow. So, I mean, it's something that we've got this sort of obsession with pooping twice a day, 3 times a day. And there's no real concrete science to say that there's anything that shows that. I mean, think about it. I mean, I've got dogs, they're on a carnivore diet, and I got to pick up poop once or twice, every other day, maybe at most, which is, it's pretty cool. But if you think about it, if you were we're not like a rhinoceros or a water buffalo that's walking around with poop falling out of her butt all day long. And you think about if you were a wild nomadic human, you had to stop to take a dump every 3 or 4 hours. I mean, it's like you got 10 people in your tribe, and it's just like, you
get kicked out of the tribe pretty quick on that. You're getting speared.
How advantageous is that, really?
Oh, it's easy. Adam's taking a dump again. Let's chuck a spear at him and end this shit. So now I want to dive into your relationship with the vegan community a little bit, because it's pretty rowdy. And what I want to know is I started following you after I saw you speak at KetoCon last year. I just noticed this instant, man, there's a lot of back and forth going on here. So who started this? Was it, were you going William Wallace and be like, I'm going to pick a fight? Or was it the vegans coming after you? How did this all start?
When I went on Rogan's show, there was this huge community. Because I mean, initially when I was doing this stuff, and I didn't do this with any sort of forethought of attacking a vegan community. I did this purely out of experimenting with my own health. And then obviously, I really wasn't even aware of this vegan community to any degree, particularly the online activist community that is extremely aggressive. And so they immediately started attacking me as some evil Hitler incarnate. How dare you suggest people eat meat? How dare you say that meat is healthy? And obviously, it blew up when I got on Rogan's podcast, because they just started, and then we've got these vegan gains making just ridiculous videos. And so, as someone who's not like, I'm not a wallflower quiet guy. I'm a competitive athlete, and I've got the personality just like, if you're going to start throwing crap my way, I can dish it out as much as I can take it. And so I just kind of push back a little bit. And it's not like I'm, what's kind of interesting, because I get these people that are, we can't wait for you to die. We can't wait for you to get colon cancer. We can't wait for your heart attack. We can't wait for your father to die. Go burn in hell, roast. I hope your soul roasts, so on and so forth.
That's intense, man.
And I don't say that. I'm just like, I hope sometimes I'll, if they really piss me off, I say, well, you deserve veganism. Hopefully you stay vegan for your whole life. But I basically don't care if someone's vegan. Quite honestly, I don't. If you want to do, I mean, and I want to say it with regard to adults, if that's what you want to do as an adult, and that's your choice, good for you, that's fine. But when you call me a murderer, when you attempt to coerce people through guilt or propaganda, or try to impact legislation, which might, impede my ability to get nutrition, which is keeping me healthy, I'm going to go back against that. And I don't, like I said, I fully support the right for someone to be a vegan. Now, I don't think vegans support the right for me to eat meat. I mean, they would, many of them, not all of them. Some of them are live and let live, but many of them are, we are going to indoctrinate your children. We are going to make it illegal to eat meat. We are going to put you in prison. We may even give you the death sentence. We hope that you are hung up by your feet and your throat is slit like an animal. This type of stuff I'm going to push back against. And I do that by showing, one, that there are many people that try a vegan diet that they fail, and they do better when they add meat back in the diet. And sometimes they become carnivorous, and that works for them. There is a lot of misinformation that the vegans put out, particularly regarding the environment, or regarding the health detriment of meat, that is based on really poor science, or misrepresented science, or incomplete science. And I'm just going to continue to push back against that. And, I realize that this is not a gentle, gentleman's type of thing. This is really, a lot of propaganda. And, it's like, you've got to bring your own, basically, propaganda. And it's, and I think more and more people are realizing what moves the masses is not the latest study. I mean, that's all this kind of clickbait headline stuff, and it goes away. But it's, this 15-second, 10-second argument, this elevator pitch, this meme, this Instagram post, this is how it's being, kind of fought in the trenches, so to speak. And I'm not above doing any and all of that stuff. So, I mean, sure, I'll put out the scientific studies, and sure, I'm facilitating getting some of these studies done. I mean, a study that David Ludwig out of Harvard that is going to be done, David approached me and started asking me about carnivore. And then his secretary went carnivore and got tremendous results. And now he's trying it out. And, I haven't heard about what he's doing on it, but he's very interested in this because of what we've done on the online community. And so I'm hitting it from all angles. Some of it appeals to some people, and this is the science, the success stories, the positive stuff. And then some of it is, trying to show where the other stuff is a problem, because ultimately veganism, this is a minor thing. There's only going to be a small percentage of people that ever do it long term. There's only going to be small. We always say we get new vegans, and then they get sick, they crap out. 2 years later, oh, I'm not vegan anymore. 5 years or 7 years or 3 months or whatever. We see it over and over again. But what's happening is now, because we've got this market, this belief, this ethical belief that people are playing on their emotions, we've got this alternate protein market that's emerging. And they're projecting this is going to be $100 billion market. And so we've got these companies that are petrochemical companies that provide, fertilizer for agriculture. We've got pharmaceutical companies that are real happy with the status quo. We've got obviously the big processed food companies, and even some of the meat companies, which are relabeling themselves as protein companies like Tyson Cargill, JBS, and Mafrig. These guys are now in the protein business. And so these guys are all seeing this market emerge. And so we get all this advertising, all this media push, all this media buy-in that is trying to say people, oh, you're going to save the planet, go eat a plant burger. Oh, you're going to save the planet, or you're going to save some little cute little pig from dying. Go eat our fake bacon. This is what we're seeing. And it's not because of vegans. It's because finance from industry seeing a very viable source of cheap, highly processed food that they can market to us dummies that are willing to pay for it and eat it, to our own demise. Right. So that's what's going on with that.
So you mentioned the environment thing a little bit, and I've had people like that know me come up to me and be like, listen, I'm stopping eating meat because, meat eaters are burning down the Brazilian rainforest and like it's causing all these fires and all this stuff. Can you just shed a little bit of truth on all that stuff? Because I'm like, this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me.
Yeah, this is again a huge, huge topic. But I mean, just as far as, there's a lot of ways you can look at the environment. So the main argument right now is global climate change caused from anthropogenic greenhouse gases. And there's a lot of people that disagree with that just very premise. And I'm not a climate scientist. I'm not here to argue for or against. But I will say, if that is the argument you're going to make, then we have to look at what does agriculture actually contribute? And then we have to look at where we live locally. So here in the United States, according to the EPA, cattle produce about 1.9% of our greenhouse gases, right? So that's not very much. I mean, our transportation industry and energy sector is probably something like 75, 80% of our greenhouse gases via fossil fuels, and that's including methane, which is converted into carbon dioxide equivalents. And so when we see that really realistically, me giving up meat is not going to have any impact on the U.S. carbon dioxide or global greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, if every human in the United States went vegan and we killed or got rid of somehow magically all the cows and all the horses and all the pigs and all the chickens and all the dogs and all the cats, the difference in worldwide greenhouse global gas output would be something like 0.4%, a tiny, tiny, tiny amount. So there's a huge, you'd have to make a huge change for almost no gain whatsoever. So that greenhouse gas argument is kind of ridiculous. And I know they quote this 14% number through the FAO about worldwide greenhouse gas emissions. And so there's a couple ways to talk about that. Number one, that is a life cycle assessment compared to direct emissions. So what that means is they measure how much exhaust comes out of a tailpipe of a car, and they say this is how much transportation causes. And then they measure, and then if they were to measure cow burps and do the same thing, they would see that animals are 5%, transportation 14%. So it's not even apples to apples in that comparison. So they do a life cycle assessment on the agriculture, and they say, what did it take to grow the crops? What did it take to package, to transport, to buy, to all the things that make going into making some beef. And so it's not really a fair comparison. If we were to say, what goes into transportation? What does it take to make the cars? What does it take to build the roads? What does it take to maintain them? You would have a much bigger number from transportation worldwide. Right. They don't do that. But also importantly, most of the world, when it comes to animal agriculture, is still 100 years behind, 200 years behind. Most of the, cattle. So in the United States, we have 94 million cattle. In the world, there are about 1.1 to 1.4 billion, depending on whose source you reach. So we have a really small percentage of the cattle in the world. Most of the cattle herd, like India has the second largest cattle herd in the world, 200 million. We've got Russia, China, India, Southeast Asia, Africa. All these cattle running around, and they're mismanaged. They're not well nourished. They're infected with parasites. It takes them 20 years to produce food, whereas they can produce it much more quickly in say, United States, UK, Australia, other places. So we have this disproportionate way that we manage these cows. And if we were just to bring cattle ranching and nutrition and genetic and breeding and livestock management up to what we did in the 1960s in the US, we could feed all the people in the world, including the projected 10 million people, the same amount of meat we have now, with probably even less cows than we have today. So this is, this information that's not popular and out there. And then the people will talk about, the rainforest thing. And so we look at Brazil. So Brazil has 220 million cattle, have the largest cattle herd in the world. Some of the Brazilian rainforest has been deforested primarily for crops first. And then after the crops have been harvested, then the cattle are putting there to graze, because what happens is their normal grazing land in South Brazil has been taken over by sugar and soybeans. And so the cattle had to move somewhere. So they shift them around. And so there's more that goes into this deforestation than just, oh, the cows are taking up room. But well, what happens is we got this huge demand for soybeans. Remember, all the soybeans on the planet are first ground or squeezed into soybean oil that not cows don't eat, humans eat. Humans eat that stuff, where they turn it into biodiesel. So we use it first, and then the soybeans, what's left over, is turned into meal and fed mostly to pigs in China. I mean, this is where this thing goes in. But even if there were not cattle in the rainforest or in Brazil, they would still be cutting down the forest for coffee, for sugar, for soybeans, right, for logging. So it's all economy. It's this country that's saying, we have this natural resource. Our economy is not where we want it to be financially. We want to improve our economy. So it's really capitalism and not cows that is driving that. And so, I mean, it's just more nuanced than this stuff to stop eating meat and all suddenly they're not going to cut down trees. That's not going to happen. Stop spending money, stop having capitalism, and stop having consumer goods. And then maybe that might happen, but you're not going to turn a country like the United States. We cut down all of our, we strip mine, we exploited our resources. They did the same thing in Europe. They're doing it in Russia. They do it all over the world. That's just what people do. So to say that the only singular issue is because cows are now, eating some grass where there used to be forest, it used to be soybeans, it used to be coffee, it used to be acai berries, is very, it's very simplistic, and it's more complicated with that. So anyway.
So the other big vegan war cry right now is the documentary, The Game Changers. I'd love to get your opinion on that. I watched this for the first time. Danny Vega and Robert Sykes were up here in Indiana. We were doing a little deer hunting. So we just got off the hunting field, and they're like, let's watch Game Changers. And it was entertaining in itself, just watching Robert and Danny react to Game Changers as they watched it. But, a lot of people are buying into that. Like, oh, I watched Game Changers, now I'm going vegan. What do you think about the science that they put out there? Like what, again, I'd love to get your truth to what's behind the information they put out there.
So the premise of the movie is you can be a vegan and be an athlete. And I don't think anybody's discounting that. I would say you can be a better athlete if you had meat in your diet than you would be as a vegan. And so they show a number of athletes, and, it's kind of funny. I looked at the athletes in the movie, particularly like football players, and, just following up what happened to them, and almost to a man, without exception, almost every one of them, retired, got sick, got hurt, couldn't play anymore. Almost all of them saw a decrease in their relative performance when they switched to veganism, with rare exception. And so, we see that is just kind of a little bit deceptive. But I mean, obviously James Cameron has this $140 million investment in Verdient Food, which is a pea processing manufacturing plant that, is supposed to be the world's largest, or one of the largest in the world. So there's that basic conflict of interest going into that. But the science that then they quote is just, again, the typical sort of really distorted, cherry-picked science that really doesn't hold up. I mean, I did a video on this, and I don't have it right in front of me that I can remember every detail on that. But I mean, they quote studies on, adding avocado to meat to reduce, I think, an inflammatory marker, in the studies funded by the Haas Avocado Board. And you're like, well, we'll talk about conflict of interest. They made up these really just silly, non-scientific experiments with these football players. One was, we're going to draw your blood after a meal, and look at all the cloudiness in there. And it's just,
they're eating the burritos.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's just silliness. It's not really scientifically rigorous. Or the same thing with this, this erection study where the guys that ate a burrito that had plant-based had more erections than the guys that ate the meat-based. I mean, this is also just complete garbage. I mean, there's so many confounders that go into that. It's just, so, I mean, they're just using, a lot of this epidemiology that they've got on there. I can't remember Willett was in I think Walter Willett might have been in that film, but they're just picking up stuff that's not really good science. And I mean, I've criticized that. I mean, the best thing I say, you could watch my video, and there's a lot of people that have done critiques on the science in that show. So it's designed to appeal to emotion. And I mean, Cameron's a good filmmaker. I mean, certainly, I mean, he's got some pretty good filmmaking resume if you want to do that. And they spent a lot of, I don't know how much money they spent on that. I don't know that it had the impact that they wanted. I mean, a few people have chosen to do that. I think really, honestly, quite honestly, I think the athletic one is the best one to test it on, because, we see a lot of athletes trying it and most of them are failing miserably with it. So I think that's the, when you put the body under stress, that's a really good way to check whether a diet is sufficient or not. And I think that's really, it might shoot them in the foot with that, because, we get these guys that, try it and they feel great for, a couple months and then they go downhill. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. The thing that like broke my heart was seeing Arnold on board with that. Like Pumping Iron is one of my favorite movies of all time. And the scene when they're all on that picnic table and they're just like eating pounds of raw hamburger, like that's one of my favorite things ever. So I was like, Arnold, man, how could you do this? And then the Tennessee Titans, a lot of people were on board. Like, look, the Titans, they're all vegan and they made it to the AFC Championship. But like you said, the players that were in the movie actually aren't even on the team anymore, right?
For the most part, I think there might be one that's still on the team, perhaps. But I think most of them are not in the film, most of the movie. And, I think they made a deal. They had a vegan meal prior to beating the Patriots, I think. And, I mean, again, this is one meal does not make, you a vegan or something like that. I mean, it's this sort of, this willingness to adopt. It's the same thing with like Tom Brady. The vegans have adopted him as this plant-based guy. But when you analyze his diet, he says he gets 20% of his diet from fish, I believe eggs, and like red meat. That's more than the average American eats when it comes to those three foods. And it's basically, he eats more meat than the average American, and he doesn't eat junk food. I mean, and that's the answer. I mean, you eat lean, not even lean. You just eat high quality, nutrient dense animal food, and you don't eat junk food. And that's the performance thing. And I think, from a performance as an athlete, you should be eating, my personal bias is something like 60, 70% of your diet should be coming from animal food, and the rest is from not junk food.
Yep.
And I think you're going to do really, really well with that.
Simple. It can be simple. All right, Dr. Shawn, I want to make sure people can get plugged into your world. We talked about meatrx.com. I want to mention that again. You've got an amazing book out, The Carnivore Diet. Can people just get that anywhere that they buy books? Amazon, they go to your website?
Yeah, I think Amazon definitely has it. I think many of the Barnes and Nobles are carrying it throughout the country, probably some other bookstores as well. There's a couple other online sellers of that. So yeah, it's doing generally pretty well. I mean, a lot of people have been really enjoying it, reading it. It's and again, I wrote it for people that are not familiar with the diet. Basically, it's a lot of philosophy. There's obviously quite a bit of science in there, but it's generally written for the person that may not have exposure to this diet. Hopefully it'll reach a wider audience and get more people thinking, at least questioning what we're doing, because I think we had this same sort of situation in 1977 when George McGovern, we adopted these low-fat guidelines in the United States, and the answer that McGovern said was, I'm a politician, I don't have time for science. And I think we're doing the same thing now. We're depending on really poor quality science, which some people are maintaining as a consensus, and it's not the consensus, and it seems not to be bearing out. I mean, if you want to look at what does meat consumption do to the human body with regard to health, you don't do a nutritional epidemiology study when 5% of the diet is meat and try to make some kind of determination. You look at people that are eating either only meat or mostly meat and see what happens to them. And I will tell you now, to the tune of many tens of thousands of people, it's generally good health, which I think is really surprising, and I think something we should pay attention to.
Yeah. And also, you guys, Dr. Shawn's got an amazing Instagram page, so I'll link that up. You'll be fully entertained one way or the other, and you can see the battle that is ensuing on Instagram. Now, Dr. Shawn, I like to leave our audience with a little bit of momentum. I love to give them some action steps. And that's something I really appreciate about you is you are somebody that implements, you are very focused, you get after it. You have this no BS attitude, with your workouts, with your nutrition, with the way you approach life. So let's say there's somebody out there listening right now and they're ready to kind of make that life U-turn. Like they've kind of been going the wrong direction. Maybe they're in their 50s like you, and they feel like somebody, quote unquote, their age is going to have a hard time reclaiming control over their health. If you could look that person in their eye and kind of talk to them and fire them up, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I would let them know that, I mean, there is no one that has got more interest in your health than you do. I mean, you can't outsource it. You can't outsource it to your doctor, your family members. You have got to be the one that does it. I don't care what situation. If you're in a wheelchair, you can improve your state. There are things you can improve every day, inch by inch. This is a throwing thing. Adam, you might have preached this. I got this. The inch by inch, it's a cinch. Yard by yard, it's hard. And so you just make measurable progress periodically, maybe every day, every week. You've got something that you can get better at. And it may not be the thing that you want to get better at, but I think, sometimes just, maybe your goal is to lose weight and you haven't lost any weight yet, but maybe you're doing push-ups. Maybe you went from 5 push-ups to 8 push-ups. Make measurable, objective, positive changes in any one direction, and you'll develop momentum, and then these other things will follow. And so that is what I have found. When I find something that's hard for me, I look at successes that I've demonstrated in other aspects of my life, and knowing that you can overcome these challenges, and these will just carry over. And so you only get one life, you only get one body. And if you're 50, you got 30 years left, hopefully 40 years. Why spend it in pain, misery, and agony, and on the sidelines? Don't be a sideline sitter. Get out there and participate in life. Participate in your own life. I mean, there's so many people that literally live their own life vicariously through others, which is kind of sad. And so you've got to be, this is all you get. You get one time, and that's it. You don't get a money back guarantee. You don't get a do-over. There's no press the reset button. So time to act is, if you're not where you want to be, time to act today. And it's just consistency and compliance, and always trying to move forward, and have fun with it too at the same time. I think you got to enjoy it.
Yes, the perfect time to start is now, my friends. Dr. Shawn Baker, man, I have really, really enjoyed this. We blasted through an hour here, and it seemed like it took about 10 minutes. I feel like we stuffed about 20 pounds of info in a 10-pound bag here, so I feel really good about this one. But I know you're super busy. You could be doing a lot of things right now, including deadlifts and eating meat, and you chose to be here with our audience. That means a lot to me, so I appreciate that very much, my friend.
Adam, thanks for the opportunity. And on that note, I am going to go get something to eat.
Yes, I can tell he's got that look in his eye. People,
I got to go train today. Yeah,
it's steak o'clock. It's steak o'clock.
It's always steak o'clock. That's awesome, man.
All right, everybody. Well, it's time to implement. Set those implementation alarms. What are you going to do in the next 24 hours? If Dr. Shawn gave you something that you want to take action on, if you're ready to get off the sidelines and get into action on improving your health, what are you going to do? Set that alarm and take action and get out there and own it every meal, every workout, every day. I will see you on the next episode.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. Now, don't forget to head on over to millionpoundmission.com to pick up your free Mission Possible Community Virtual Welcome Kit. Now, this free resource is going to show you how to get plugged into our community chats, our amazing Facebook group. It'll show you how to sign up for one-on-one hot seat sessions with me, the PhD, and we'll even show you how to start your own local meetup group for that extra support. Now, remember, my friend, this isn't just a podcast. This is a community, and you are an important part of it. So head on over to millionpoundmission.com today and get plugged in.